Hi, this is Chapter 5, Section 4 on the slope formula. So we're dealing with the slope formula, looking at a graph here with 2 points on the graph at 3, 2, and at -5, -5. So if we're looking at these 2 points and you were asked to find the slope of that line, so 2 points there. If you're asked to find the slope of that line, many of us think in terms of rise over run. So if we look at this graph, the rise from -5 all the way up to 2. So from -5 to 0 would be 5, and up 2 more would give us a rise of 7. And the run, well, from -5 to 3, to give us 5 to get to 0, and then 3 more to get to our point, we're looking at a run of 8. And what we do when we're talking about rise over run, when we look at a picture, we can just count the number of boxes between the 2 points. But when we're looking at just a set of ordered pairs, we're going to need some other method, some other way. And so that's where the slope formula comes in, is just given the 2 points, how can we find this slope? And here is our formula. If x1 and y1 is our first point, and x2, y2 is another point, then we have this formula, m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. And since y, the y-axis, is the vertical axis, that is our rise, and x is our horizontal axis, that is our run. So we still have rise over run. We're just looking at it in terms of ordered pairs as opposed to a simple graph. And so that is the slope formula that we're going to be using. I'll give you a couple examples here. If I ask you to find the slope of the line that contains the points 4, -2, and -1, 2, we're going to use that slope formula, which is going to be y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Okay? Now, when we're looking at these 2 points, I'm just going to go through and say, well, just like in the alphabet, it goes x and then y, x, and then y. Be careful that you don't put your x's all together and your y's all together. It doesn't go x, x, y, y. It's x, y, x, y. And then we'll just do 1, 1, and x2, y2. So if I use my formula, plug in the points I have a y2 and I have a y1, 2 minus a -2, and I've got an x2 and an x1. x2 is -1 minus x1 of 4. I subtract here 2 minus a -2 ends up giving me a positive 4, and -1 minus 4 ends up giving me a -5. So we've got -4/5 as our slope for a line containing those 2 points. Now, one of the nice things about this formula is it does not matter which one is your x1 and which one is your x2. If I flip these numbers around and I end up doing -2 minus 2 all over 4 minus a -1. If I flip those 2 around and do it the opposite direction, backwards, I still end up with -4/5. So it doesn't matter which one is your x1, y1, and which one is your x2, y2. You both get the same result, -4/5, just so long as you're careful with your negatives. So using that formula, see if you can find the slope of the line containing 2, 2, and -2, -1. All right, let's see how you did. So again, my formula, y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. If I plug in my points, I've got my x1, y1, x2, y2. y2 is a negative 1 minus y1 of 2, x2 of negative 2, x1 of 2. Negative 1 minus 2 is going to give me a negative 3. Nope. And negative 2 minus 2 is going to give me a negative 4. Now, one thing to be careful of. We did say that with slope, improper fractions are okay. 5/4, 12/5. But when we have a negative divided by a negative, we can reduce that down. A negative divided by negative is a positive 3/4. So while improper fractions are okay, you do have to reduce and you do have to worry about those negatives. So the slope of this line is a positive 3/4. They will give you a graph with 2 points. At this point, you have your choice now. You can use our slope formula of y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1 and use these 2 points to find the slope, or you can just visually look at the graph and count. We've got a rise of 1, 2, 3, 4, and a run of 1, 2. So rise over run, 4 over 2, I get a slope of 2. So visually, we can still do it that way. If we were to use the formula, I'm looking at a y2. I'm going to pick this to be my x2 and y2. So y2 is going to be 2 minus a negative 2. Again, what's great about this formula is it doesn't matter which point you choose to be your second set of points, x2, y2. And then I'm going to do my x2 minus x1, and I'm going to have 0 minus a negative 2. All right, that ends up equaling 2 minus a negative 2 is 4. 0 minus a negative 2 is 2. And look at that, the slope is the same, 2. So whether you do rise over run or use the formula, which is essentially rise over run, you still get the same result. Your choice when they give you a picture. Last thing we're going to look at here are tables. At this point, they don't have any ordered pairs, and they don't give you a graph. So what you have to do is you have to find some ordered pairs. Now, luckily, ordered pairs are always in the form XY. If you look, tables are in the form XY. So there's really 4 points here. There's 1, negative 1, 0, 1, negative 1, 3, and negative 2, 5. Any of those 4 points will work in our formula. My suggestion to you, pick some easy points. If I've got my formula y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1, I want to pick some easy points. I'm going to pick these points here. My x1 and my x2, y1, and my y2. I like these points because zeros and ones are a lot easier to deal with than 5s and 3s. Smaller numbers are typically easier to work with. So I'm going to plug those in. y2 is a negative 1. y1 is a 1. My x2 minus x1, 1 minus 0. So negative 1 minus 1 is going to give me a negative 2. And 1 minus 0 is 1, giving me a slope of negative 2. Okay? So, again, pick easy points. So try the bottom one. See how you do. Okay, let's see how we do here. So again, I'm picking my x, y. I'm going vertically up and down. I'm going to pick the first 2 points here, 0, 1, and 2, 5, because again, they're smaller numbers, and I like smaller numbers. They're easier to work with. Got my formula, y2 minus y1, all over x2 minus x1. Here's my x and my x, my y, and my y. All right, again, it doesn't matter which one's 1 or 2, just so long as you keep them straight. y2 minus y1, 5 minus 1, x2 minus x1, 2 minus 0. 5 minus 1, 4, 2 minus 0, 2, and a 4 divided by 2 is going to give me 2. Because remember, we do have to reduce. So even though it is an improper fraction, we can still reduce, and the slope is 2. All right, so there's how you use the slope formula. Good luck.